Hello, dear students. Today we are going through Unit 1 in your course book English for Medicine. The unit is titled What is Medicine? What about the learning outcome of this lecture? By the end of the lecture, you should be fluent in the focused vocabulary and you should make the most of a lecture. The lecture contents is going to be the vocabulary focus and the skills focus. During the vocabulary focus, we are going to discuss words in general English with special meaning in medicine. And the skills focus is divided into listening skill focus and speaking skill focus. The listening skill focus is going to cover preparing for a lecture, predicting lecture content from the introduction, understanding lecture organization, choosing appropriate form of a note, and making lecture notes. Whereas the speaking skill focus is going to cover speaking from notes. The first item we are going to discuss is the vocabulary focus. Some words have meaning in general English and a special or another meaning in medicine. Look at this extract from your book. It's actually an email. Look at the words in red. We have history, dressed, valves, delivery, patient, drip, theater, admit, cast, and lens. Actually, all these words are in general English meaning here. Look at these words and try to figure out their meaning in medicine. Actually, sometimes the meaning in general English and in medicine are related. For example, the word history. It means a story in the past, in general English and in medicine. In medicine, it is the story of the patient, medical condition or illness. This is a table of the meaning of the vocabulary in medicine. Guessing words in context is a very important skill in listening and in reading. What will you do if you don't know the meaning of a word? You try to figure it out from the context. What is the context? It's the general theme or the general idea of the text. So, if you recognize a word in general English but you don't understand its meaning in medicine in the context, think of the basic meaning of the word in general English. Here is an example from your book. Drip. What is the meaning of drip? Drip means tiny flow of liquid in general English. And in medicine, it means a drip that is given to the patient. The drip is here a fluid or drug that is given to the patient in the form of tiny flow of fluid. Now we are moving to the second part of the lecture, which is making the most of lectures. If you are a student at the Faculty of Medicine and the title of the first lecture is What is Medicine? And you are asked to do the following. Write a definition of medicine. Try to predict the other ideas which may be discussed in the lecture. Can you do this? I think you can't do this. You can't do this without preparation. So how to prepare for a lecture? So how to prepare for a lecture? We have things to do before the lecture and things to do during the lecture. Before the lecture, we have to plan and prepare. During the lecture, we have to predict and produce. so there are 4 P's. Now, what will you do before the lecture? Before the lecture, you have to plan. How to plan? By finding out the topic of the lecture. Then go and do some researches on this topic. Then you may find some keywords and names that you don't know. So go and check their meaning and pronunciation. Then prepare yourself for the lecture by being early. Go to the lecture room early. Sit where you can see and hear best. Bring with you all you need and write the date, the topic, and the name of the lecturer on a piece of paper. Now, what to do during the lecture? First, you have to predict. You listen to the introduction, try to predict the content of the lecture, and then try to figure out what kind of lecture it will be, so you can choose the appropriate form of notes. Then write an outline for the lecture and leave space for notes. Then think of some answers, possible solution and effects while the lecturer is speaking. After this, you come to the produce part, which is how to write notes. You have to write notes for the lecture and copy some information from the board. Then you have to record the lecturer resources, which may be books, websites, or some names. And then at the end of the lecture, if you miss some information, you may ask other students about it, or if you have the opportunity, you may ask the lecturer. Here are some important listening skills. During listening to a lecture or even an audio, you have to know how to listen for main idea, how to listen for key vocabulary, how to listen for specific information, and how to notice the order of information. While we are trying to make the most of a lecture, we have some extended skills. So we have to identify different types of a lecture organization and to choose the best form of notes for a lecture. We have different methods to present the information in a lecture or different types of lecture organization. So we have here some beginnings and endings, and if we match them together, we come to some methods of presenting information in a lecture. We have the question and answers, problem and solution, classification and definition, advantages and disadvantages, comparison and contrast, causes and effects, sequence of events, stages of process, and we have the theories of or opinion, then the supporting information. Those are the different methods of how we can present information in a lecture. We have different methods of note taking, and each method is suitable for a lecture organization form. So if you look at this box, you will find the methods of note taking, which is the tree diagram, flow chart, headings and notes, spidergram, table, timeline, and 2 columns. So number 1 here is the flow chart. Number 2 is the tree diagram. Number 3 is the 2 columns. Number 4 is the table. Number 5 is the heading and the notes. Number 6 is the timeline. And the number 7 is the spidergram. Now, how to be an effective note taker. Taking notes during listening to a lecture or a long audio is a very important listening skill. If you don't take notes, you may lose very important information during the lecture or the audio. So you have to take notes and you have to take them effectively so that if you go back to them, you will understand them and they will help you to study the lecture later on. So how to be an effective note taker? Here are some tips. Use spacing between points so that your writing will be clear. Use abbreviations and make them standardized. Don't change the abbreviations each time so that when you come back to them, you understand them. Use symbols to take the note rapidly. Underline the headings, which are the important point in the lecture. Use capital letters. Use indenting. Make ordered point so that the lecture is well organized. Use different colors and use keywords only. These steps help you to be an effective and rapid note taker. Now, this is an exercise of how to choose the appropriate form of note for a certain lecture organization. You hear this in the introduction. In the lecture today, I am going to talk about the different stages of Alzheimer's and how these can be recognized in a patient. Well, what form of notes would you choose to record this lecture? Clearly here the lecture is about the stages of a disease, so it goes through different stages which occurred over time. So what kind of note would you choose for this? Yes, it is the timeline form of note. Now we come to the last part, which is speaking skill focus, and it is about speaking from notes. If you are asked to make short talk on a research you have done, what should you do? It will help you very much to have effective notes if you are going to talk in front of an audience. So, what to do? Use the note-taking skills to prepare your notes and make effective and very adequate notes. Make a good introduction to prepare the listeners. The introduction is a very important part of the lecture, which drags the attention of the listeners. Then match the introduction to the type of information of notes you have taken. For further details and exercises, go to the course book Unit 1 and listen to the Unit 1 audios, which will be uploaded for you. Thank you. Stay safe wherever you are.